Well, hey RPG fans, how's it going? It's me, Greg. For those of you who are Canadian like myself, happy Canada Day weekend. For those of you over in the States, happy Independence Day weekend. And for those of you everywhere else in the world, happy weekend. I've got another episode here for you, and that means a download of news before we get into it, so let's go. First up is a feature in the one-player missions from Alana Heggs, which is a beautiful, heartfelt, honestly genuine piece. Queer Replicant confronting sexuality and identity through Kainé and Emil in NieR Replicant. Alana very openly discusses her struggle and journey through her sexuality and how that links to the NieR series, and just it kind of went hand in hand with the discovery. So just give this beautiful piece a read, and hopefully it'll give you some insight into her life, possibly into your own, who knows. I just think it's a really well written, great piece, so please check it out. We have another game primer from Scott Clay. Remember when Scott played a whole bunch of Trails games, and then he went and wrote So You Want to Get Into the Trails series? Well, it's been revised since we got announcements of the Zero no Kaseki entries, and it's all a bunch of good stuff in there. If you're thinking about playing Trails, definitely give this a look first so you know what the heck you're getting into, because there's so much, and from what I hear, it's so good, but also there's just a lot that you gotta be ready for, so go check it out. Another beautiful, fantastic special feature just as we rounded out Pride Month, but it's Pride all the time, whatever, celebrate it. Pride in Progress, celebrating LGBTQIA plus representation in RPGs. A bunch of our staff got together and wrote about their favorite places of representation in that community and in related games, and what did the best job and the progress that's been made in the industry to help boost representation. So it's fantastic if you're looking for a bunch of games that will speak to you if you feel you are part of that community. Then this is the definitive RPG list for you. Now over to the reviews department. We kick it off with Izzy Parsons and their great review of Scarlet Nexus. This game looks cool. It's beautiful. It's got some creepy monster design, and despite being a bit of a slow burn in a lot of ways, it came out pretty good. I've been seeing good things about it all around, so I'm glad Izzy had a good time with it. Go check out the review. Corey Tischbein went to Death End Request since it's been ported over to the Nintendo Switch, and had a look at that for us, and it has not landed that great. Aside from a great story, everything else is pretty lacking on there. And if you didn't like the first one, having it on the Switch may or may not change your mind. Maybe the portability will be a thing for you, but otherwise, it's there, it's a game, and maybe you liked it more. Who knows? Go check out Izzy's review, though, and see if you agree and or disagree. Nikki Fakuri took on the recent surprise release from Nintendo, Famicom Detective Club on the Switch, and overall, this seems like a pretty cool little VN. Aside from some, troubling progression, it's a pretty cool game for folks who have been wanting to see these come overseas finally, and are looking for a gorgeous-looking visual novel to get into. Audra Bowling back on the prowl for more games. She can never be satiated, plays them all. Red, White, Blue, Yellow, Grim Eclipse Definitive Edition came onto the Nintendo Switch, and she was the one to get her hands on it. Overall, pretty average game, and if you are a die-hard fan of that series, then this is definitely going to be a fun co-op game experience for you. Otherwise, it's got a lot of hang-ups with some of the clunky control and gameplay, and it's not as pretty as you'd expect from a game of the modern age, but otherwise, you will probably have fun with it, so go check out the review. As a shock to no one, Caitlin Argyros continues her adventures in Final Fantasy XIV and has given us another review journal book for Shadowbringers. This game remains to blow minds and be an RPG fan editor's choice, and the Shadowbringers entry and the final part of this expansion is no different. So if you're wanting to see how the entire arc of Shadowbringers went, go check out Caitlin's ongoing review journals. On the E3 episode, we talked about how cool looking Death Trash was, and Abraham Kobolansky got to preview Death Trash for us, and he's pretty high on it. It looks pretty promising. It's a neat game if you want to look for a bit of like a horror Cthulhu-ish fantasy. It's something we don't see a ton of, and the pixel artwork is just stellar. So if you are a fan of Western CRPGs, then this is going to be one that you don't want to miss. And our final bit of news content comes from our RPGFan chapters. We have the full final review from Hilary and Andreff on a guide to Japanese role-playing games. We've been previewing and dropping little bits, and now you can read the whole complete review of this giant complete tome. And we're going to be talking about it in the episode too, so tune in to episode 218 of Random Encounter. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Random Encounter. I'm your host, Greg Delmage, and just before we get into the episode proper, you may notice a bit of background noise on my end because it is chocobo and hot here in Vancouver. We are in my house it's somewhere around 105 Fahrenheit. Per gross.
He's in the heat dome.
Yeah, I am in the dreaded heat dome here. I mean, we're definitely coming out the other side.
Have you not set yourself up in front of the fridge and just sat there and recorded
right?
there?
Just that as it buzzes to try and keep up.
And the fridge is broken for some reason.
Inexplicably.
Gotta eat everything.
It's going to be a bit of a noisy one, yeah. With the fan, I've got my door open and I got the window open because otherwise my office becomes a sweat box and I will pass out and die. And as much as I love you all and love having the best sound quality that we can possibly get usually for the episode, this is a part of the craft I am not willing to suffer for. I'm sorry. At any rate, yeah, we got peoples here. Who do we got here?
We got many impressive people here today. If you don't mind, I would love to introduce everybody.
Gee, I wonder why.
So we have Greg Huckleberry Delmage.
Uh-huh.
We got Hilary Swanky Andreff.
Oh, I like it.
Like Swanky Kong?
And Jono Wolverine Logan.
Yep, I'm Canadian. That's me.
Very Canadian. Canadian bacon. Let's do it.
I'm Canadian and I'm short. It works.
Well, and the name Logan.
Yeah, exactly. I have everything.
Well, we are. Thank you very much, Steph.
Absolutely, but Steph didn't introduce herself.
Ah, yes, and it is I, Steph.
Nothing before it.
And now, back to the show.
Steph, my book cover just got published and is out today.
Ooh, okay, that one was better.
Yeah, we'll take it.
I haven't received it yet, but I am very familiar with the cover, so, you know.
That's really what gets your attention for the book anyway. That's the point of the cover.
Exactly. I'm actually very excited to talk about it a little bit, too, because I actually use video game assets in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, I have a question. Hey, Greg, the cover of what?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the cover of a beautiful book that we're about to talk about on today's episode, actually. But before I take a bite at that segue, Steph, thank you for introducing us all. And how is everybody doing? I've already told you all that I'm chocobo and hot. How about Jono? How's life over in TO? I hear it's stormy.
I'm chocobo and wet. It's very wet outside. It's a very wet GTA.
Steph and I are currently, it's leaking here.
Yeah, from the skies.
Yeah.
It's damp.
It's warm, but the humidity is really, really bad right now, and it is raining, and we have a bit of a thunderstorm right here, so there won't be any thunder in the background. I'll make sure none gets into the podcast, but yeah, it's pretty gross here.
Keep that Rama out of there.
No, it's some Zio. Yeah.
I'm a fan of Quetzalcoatl.
Oh, yes. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't think I've ever tried.
That's how I went for it, Quetzalcoatl or Quetzalcoatl, but I would have to probably talk or look in the etymology of it to actually figure out how it's phonetically pronounced, but at any rate.
Over the years, it's been shameful to find out how many Final Fantasy words I've been mispronouncing.
Wait, his name is Locke? I always thought it was Locky.
Locke, actually. If you're saying it in the original French, it's Locke.
Disney just made a show about it. Didn't you know? Loki?
Disney is also making a Final Fantasy show? No, wait, sorry. That's, that other thing. Whatever, they're making a Final Fantasy NieR cartoon. That's cool.
Yeah, they're making a Final Fantasy IX cartoon. They're making a
Legend of Mana cartoon.
Super
Mana
excited.
cartoon.
Legend of Mana anime.
Wow.
And it's the same group that did the really cool new opening, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I feel like that was just clips from it, basically. Just shoved in there. I think it's just a teaser.
The best part of E3.
For Square Enix, I mean. But yeah, Haley, you just got back from vacation. That was lovely.
Yes, I did. I visited my parents for the first time in a long time out in Colorado, and it was a really nice visit. There weren't any horribly destructive hot days or anything. The weather was pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah, it was a really nice visit.
No one was too sweaty, so everyone could hug properly.
Exactly.
Plus, double vaxes. That also helps
Yes,
too.
that does.
I'm so glad for y'all. I know, Johnny, you just got yours and you're still feeling it, but not laid out anymore. Steph, how do you got yours on the horizon?
Trying to reschedule us and get ours a little bit sooner.
Oh, great. So you can hug humans soon.
Yes, that would be nice.
Right?
A little bit more behind, yeah.
I got mine I was supposed to get mine in the August 15th, and I've got mine way early. But yeah, this one really knocked me back on my butt.
I heard, yeah, second one is a bit hard hitting.
It was pretty bad. It was weird too, because I got it, I felt fine, but it really nails you just like out of nowhere. I felt fine, was feeling good, and I was like, oh, why am I dizzy? And then within 15 minutes, I was laid out on my bed, just But it's worth it because, hey, I'm vaccinated now, or at least I will be in 1 week, fully vaxxed, and that'll be good.
Mostly safely traveled, just, dodge that Delta variant.
To celebrate, I'm going to my partner's cottage in the woods where we will be far away from everyone, so I will be wasting the first week of my immunity.
Oh, not a waste.
Invite all the neighbors for a cottage party. But that's awesome. And yeah, like I said, not much going on here. It's just been really hot, and I've been playing... on the weekend, I finally had time to myself, so I just played a game and just brought the fan everywhere with me. I was moving around the house. Didn't matter what I was doing. Fan was my best friend and was with me.
It's his RPG fan.
It literally was that day.
I do I just get a wet cloth and I just slap it around on me.
I always put a t-shirt in the freezer.
Oh, that's a good one.
My wife did that yesterday. I had a hat and a t-shirt in the freezer. I wonder if the t-shirt might actually still be there, because I remember she intended to put it on when she got back because she was on set for doing a feature film, and they were filming outside, and she's the AD, so she's doing stuff, and it was kind of brutal. And yeah, I think she was just ready to chill out when she came back, and I don't think she actually went to the freezer for it. I'm curious, I might still be in the deep freeze.
If Greg vanishes midway through the podcast, we know that he's wearing a shirt that's way too small for him.
Just drape it over myself. But at any rate, yeah, we're here to talk about RPGs, not the weather and stuff, as nice as it is to enjoy summer coming up and reminisce on those halcyon days of playing video games without end. And yeah, there was a mention of a book that just came out.
It's a guide to Japanese role-playing games. And, that really was the perfect introduction for it, because it really does kind of harken back to those days where every new RPG was wonderful and mysterious, and...
You found out about it through a magazine?
Mm-hmm, you found out about it through magazines or through...
a friend told you,
or word of mouth.
Yeah.
And... yeah, it was all very mysterious, and you only found out much later how it related to other things and compared and contrasted, and you didn't have walkthroughs.
Yeah, unless you could afford the Prima guide.
Yeah, they would direct you to the internet.
Yes.
Yeah, once we had that, right? Or you'd call the Nintendo hotline.
Oh, the hint lines.
That was a service to cash in on. But yeah, then I bring that up too, because especially that's one of the reasons we had Steph on here to talk about this as well, because Hilary, you reviewed it, previewed it. There was a very extensive coverage of this amazing tome of JRPGs of yore and moving into the present. And Steph, you did the cover art, which definitely harkens back to I look at those kids playing and I just feel it. I feel it being in my friend's basement, my friend's bedroom, whatever, wherever we played until 4 a.m. Or unless we got caught, just diving into those games.
So many one-player games that you still would stick around for,
Yeah, or you'd take advantage of, my friends and I did
the few that had a co-op.
Yeah, we would pass around the Nintendo controller and each have our character take its turn in Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's such a friggin' lovely poster. I mean, there are so many little details. First off, you can tell whose house it is, because the little one, she's sitting on a pillow, and she's player one, and a cat is about to jump on her. So, obviously, it's her place.
Took it from my own memory. I mean, it's really what it is,
That's how you played video games, with a cat continuously trying to jump on you?
It was a dog, but I did like using a cat for this one. I thought a dog was a little bit too, chunky for the picture, but... Oh, God. Wait, so do you actually have the poster? Because I'm so scared of that.
No, I don't. I don't have it because... I'm waiting for my birthday.
Because those bookshelves are full of terrible, terrible puns. All of them are terrible, terrible video game puns that I'm very ashamed of.
No, don't be ashamed.
So I'm scared of them actually showing in full size, because I can kind of vaguely see them. Or I made non-denominational game logos and game covers.
Well, let's go into it, because this whole thing is like 643 pages of just history and amazingness.
There's like a few people on our site and from various sites who actually contributed this thing. Like, it is a big effort. It was huge.
Yeah, so we want to start there? I mean, it was like...
Kind of, like, we'll go almost like, not quite cover to cover, because that would be a very long episode, but like, yeah, we'll start at the cover.
We shall read it all to you over the air.
And exactly, this is going to be an audiobook, actually. Surprise, everybody. We'll all take turns.
Introduction. No, I'm just kidding.
If you want, you can actually check out my Dice SMS Instagram, and I actually do have some of the alternative covers that I pitched there, which is actually kind of cool. A lot of them are just kind of, based off like tropes, that you see in a lot of these games, like big overhead shots, airships in the back, kind of those big clusters that you see on the cover of all the things. So I had a few of those kind of pitches, but the one that they resonated most with was, of course, the one of the two kids playing, and just, all the kind of big sights and visuals that you see in these games was the one that won.
Did they give you a lot of free reign with it? Like, or did they pitch you ideas first, or did they just say, like, show us what you got based on this?
Actually, at first we clashed a little bit. Just like some of the ideas that they had. They wanted like a big yeah, of course. And like when I say clash, I mean no heads were actually butted. Just like their idea and my idea were like just going completely different directions.
Yeah, that's what you say. Okay.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, okay. That's not at all what I had in mind. So we kind of talked it out and sussed it out, and we were able to agree on this one.
Awesome.
Yeah, I remember the original pitch was something like a big kind of pub scene, but like I thought like most JRPG protagonists are usually like 16-year-olds, and they always make the joke that they can't even go into pubs.
Right, or the pub serves milk.
Yeah, or they get milk or juice, or I love that stupid milk bar in Majora's Mask.
Milk pubs and hidden dirty mags.
That thing is my favorite. But yeah, so I was like, it's a good idea, and like there can be a lot of creativity and room with it, but I was like, I think we could do something a little bit bigger almost. So. And
it's kind of a go-to for a lot of like fantasy covers for a lot of that stuff, right? Especially when you go into the D&D oeuvre.
Yeah. So basically, I wanted to kind of capture that part of my childhood where you're playing games together with somebody, whether a friend or a sibling who introduced it to you, and you kind of know it that way. And the top is just based on like all my favorite kind of characters and tropes that you see in these kinds of games. I hope like they kind of look familiar. I get kind of flattered when people ask, what game is this? And I'm like, haha, I fooled you.
Greatest JRPG SNES game never made.
Right, yeah. The assets on the TV screen are literally just game assets that I ripped and spliced and kind of painted over. So that was actually a lot of fun.
What did it start out as? Yeah.
Well, you can see the blue, and the kind of coloring is absolutely Final Fantasy VI based.
I thought so, but cool.
Other assets are like, some of it is like from Legend of Mana, some of it's from like a few other Square Enix Treasure of the Rudras, like that obscure one. Yeah, so I just kind of mixed and matched until like barely anything looked like it originally did.
I like how there's the little knockoff slime in the image, but there's also a stuffed version of him below it.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that.
Well, that's cool, yeah, because you see all the inspirations in, like, there's the robot and...
Someone's bought a few collector's editions.
Yeah, and the dog.
Yeah, and the dog, and the kind of faux Pokemon kind of thing. I wish I made something a bit more Pokemon-like, but I was just, like, totally scrounging for ideas in a rush.
The little dog, and it's, like, coming out of a Poke Cube.
Yeah, make it come out of a cube. Oh, I should have done that. Oh, I did have, like, a really bad Pokemon knockoff in the bookcase, too. Oh, I just called it Pocket Pets. Okay.
That's awesome.
Instead of wild arms, there's wild legs.
I was going to say, what's your favorite joke on there? Like, what was the one, what was either your first joke, or what was the one that you were just the most proud of?
Wild legs is definitely up there. I won't lie.
I like that one a lot.
There's, instead of Lunar, I put Moonar.
It's just all butts all the time.
Like, I'm really embarrassed for this to get shared because it's so bad. Let's see. There is Oh, I put some stuff in Japanese. I don't remember what it was, but I know I was making a pun on a title that never came here. Oh, Xenosphere is there too.
Nice.
And Ice Crest instead of Fire Emblem.
I'm sorry, Ice Crest actually sounds like a JRPG, SNES era JRPG.
It does.
The video game and the cartridge is Eternity Saga, which I totally just ripped off a similar, RPG knockoff I drew when I was in high school because I thought the name sounded legit too.
And how many different potted plants did you try till you found the right one?
Oh my god, yeah, this was really fun to do. And then I ripped a whole bunch of ideas from. I actually worked in a piece of fan art that I never posted or ever ended up using, and I just used that as one of the covers. Yeah, so that was actually a lot of fun to do. A lot of people already recognize that I took one of the old N64 magazine covers with Link on it.
Yeah, I love that one, the D64 one.
Yeah, so a lot of people recognize that, and I'm really happy that people have recognized things.
And there's one that looks kind of
like,
what's her face from Final Fantasy Tactics Advance?
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, that's great. Well, I mean, and even it's funny that John was saying, oh, that sounds like it could be an actual title. As we go into this book, and those of you who pick it up, there's so many random obscure titles that either were lost in translation or just that's what they are, that you read about in here and you're just really? Okay, cool.
I like to think that I'm fairly well versed in NES and SNES RPGs, even ones that released on the Famicom. But I was going through this book, there's so many games that I have not heard of. I've
been playing games since before I could walk, yeah, and some of them are just so obscure. It's really cool. They really went way deep.
Well, and stuff that just didn't make it over here either, right?
The PC gaming section was really cool.
Oh yeah, but I mean, there's some games here that aren't even they'll never get a fan translation.
True.
They're gone forever. Can I just say my favorite title? I mentioned this in the pre-show. My favorite title is on page 539, and it is a Famicom RPG called Just Breed.
So bad.
It is one of the most technically advanced games on the Famicom.
Again, is there breeding, or is it just a title that maybe sounds cooler until it's a bit lost in translation?
I think it might be lost in translation. It says it's very similar to Shining Force, but I don't remember there being a lot of breeding in Shining Force, so...
I don't know, this random, square knockoff of, Robotech called Cruise Chaser Blasty with 2 S's is pretty fun name, too. So we'll turn it over to Hill, because you got to review the book for us when... Bitmap Books offered us a published version of it too.
You had one of the first ones too,
Yeah, it was a surprise and an absolute delight that we, arranged for that to happen, and I'm really honored. One of the first things to mention about this, I think, is that Bitmap is really careful about visuals and the quality of everything visually with all of their books. And this title is no exception. The printing is really nice, high quality, images look great, all of that stuff. It's reinforced.
Well, Bitmap was founded by a graphic designer, right?
Yes, correct.
Before we get super into the book, why don't we just mention what Bitmap Books is, just so give it a little bit of background.
Good idea.
So yeah, on their website it says they're an award-winning independent publisher of retro gaming books, and that is underselling them. These books are gorgeous. There is a very visual bent to them. When I think of video game books, I tend to think about some of the stuff that's sold on Fangamer, for example, is outstanding, like Legends of Localization books. Boss Fight obviously does some incredible things. But what these folks do is very visual-based books. So, they have a lot of books that...
it's curated very specifically.
Exactly. There's NES Famicom, a visual... compendium. There's an SNES Famicom.
Right. Yeah, they have a lot of visual compendiums of early consoles. One of my favorites that is not this one is their Art of the Point and Click Adventure.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It looks great.
It looks great, and there's some really fun interviews. They do a good job of getting some interesting featured content along with just really amazing visuals, and they're UK based.
And this book is almost like I don't want to call it a sequel, but it's sort of a sequel to the C RPG book, A Guide to Computer Role-Playing Games.
Yeah, which I really want to look into as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they have Super Famicom, the box art collection. They have one for Game Boy. So yeah, if you are into graphic design and the art of video games, Bitmap Books is really a company that you want to take a look at, a publisher you want to look at.
Good gift giving thing too. If you want to get a gift for somebody, I think anybody who's very big into gaming would really appreciate something like this. It's one of those kinds of things.
Hi, hello me.
Their books are absolutely gorgeous, and they are growing. They have quite a selection.
Yeah.
One of the books that is really cool that I've been seeing a lot talked on Twitter is The Games That Weren't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which looks really cool, which is there's so many stories about unreleased movies and television shows, and this is about games that almost were but weren't.
There's huge, such a big growing history of that too, and
So
and
much
especially now as
abandonware.
we keep an eye on this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, Bitmap Books, really, really cool. And as we were saying, they've released their brand new one, A Guide to Japanese Role-Playing Games. And, Hilary got the advanced copy, and it sounds like they just knocked it out of the park based on... You wrote many, many articles and previews for this, too, before the review.
Yeah. So, the first... And you can check this out on the site. I'm sure we'll have something about it in the show notes, too. But... we started with a feature just to kind of give a visual preview with some pictures and to talk about the visual side of things, since that's a lot of what Bitmap does. Then we had 2 kind of featured sneak peeks that had excerpts from the different sections of the book. One was focused on the introductory sections because there are multiple introductions, which I think works really well for this book. And then the other was more game specific.
Yeah, it's a nice way to break down different themes and like the history, the different ways in which JRPGs are created and crafted for, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I was just flipping through right now, and I'm actually really loving this section they included for like Western games that were heavily influenced by Japanese games. This is really cool. They really went the breadth of it. You know?
And that is something to really bring up with this book. There are some Western games in here, and while that initially might seem like, hey, wait, is that a JRPG? One thing that I think this book does really well is sort of demonstrates and kind of catalogs some of the cultural exchange over time. And
yeah, they're all influenced. Yeah.
Exactly, the influence back and forth. It's the individual game chapters start with the 80s computer RPGs mostly. And those were heavily influenced by a lot of the Western computer games that were based off tabletop games. Things like Wizardry and Ultima and things like that.
Yeah.
And then over time sort of developed into more of the JRPG style that we're familiar with. And then in turn, now we're seeing some of these Western games that are heavily influenced by JRPGs. So it's very interesting to see that over time.
Really, like you said, the cultural exchange going on of, who's influenced by who, And it's great to think how we've kind of taken ideas and, really kind of paid attention.
Exactly. And so I think the introduction sections do a really good job with that as well, because they cover a lot of bases. They talk about the influence of anime, for example, on how, some of these maybe early PC games that were based on Western games, kind of anime may have influenced them, or some of them. And there's a section about religious imagery and things like that in JRPGs.
That one's pretty hardcore. I like that one.
Called Attack and Dethrone God. Yep.
You can actually see that in our excerpts too.
Yes. That is one of the excerpts.
That's one of the ones we pulled apart. It's a great read.
There's a lot of history there.
It's good that Bitmap is kind of like, kind of chronicling this, as we go along. It's, kind of hard in the moment to see when, the hobby that you're taking part in is going to have some sort of historical or cultural impact, even just as a hobby. But it's good that, there is someone who is willing to chronicle it and just so beautifully and completely.
And I think that's one of the things I ended up saying in my ultimate review of it is that we don't have a lot of resources like this about RPGs yet.
Certainly not published in a book. Like there are countless articles about them.
Endless online posts and back and forth.
Exactly. But if you wanted to teach a course about JRPGs, this could very easily be a textbook.
Almost looks like one too, just from the way the pictures are assembled too.
It's funny because everything is assembled almost in like kind of encyclopedia entry format with box art and like some really nice images.
So satisfying.
It's really satisfying, but reading the entries, it's super interesting how they read like mini reviews. And I think that's actually what they call them. And they struck a really good balance, I think, of kind of explaining popular opinion about the game, but also sharing those negatives and positives and impressions in a way that overall sound too biased, if that makes sense. They just kind of put it all out there.
Sometimes the weaknesses are sort of like their point too, right? It's sort of fun to kind of gauge in like what was good and what just did not work.
And that's especially true, like a lot of the beginning chapters are for a long-running series or publishers, so it's especially interesting to see that for like an individual publisher or like a series. What's different? What did they maybe get wrong in this one that they later got right? Or, what happened to this series that started out really well?
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite thing about the book. I think I said this in my review, but is that you can answer so many questions. If you want to look at box art over time, You can, if you're curious about comparing a certain series with another series, you could probably do that. It's just organized well.
And like it covers, what was it? I think it was like 1987 or something like that to 2020.
Yeah, I mean, there's other games in here that are before that. Like
Right.
here's one from 1983, but primarily the period is 86 to onwards because that's, when it really started becoming about RPGs. JRPGs.
I could have sworn they actually had one of the Trails titles for its Japanese name that was just recently announced for finally English release too. So it's kind of interesting to see how some of the information in it is going to be prone to change maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
I've always found it very exciting that many of these companies are looking like they've realized, oh, hey, we have a gold mine here of content that people really, really want. Maybe we should release it.
I get that it's a risk, but just so much effort, especially those Tales titles. I always screw that up. Those Trails titles.
Yeah.
But like I love the fact that they're actually okay with using fan translations. Like after a lot of work and rework, but I mean they're willing to use it as a helpful base.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That recent announcement.
Yeah, it is really neat to see them working, with a translation that so many people have probably been playing.
That's what everyone was kind of saying, even with Trials of Mana, right? And then we finally got the actual translation of that.
Yeah, we got both. We got spoiled. Yeah.
We did. So yeah, it was. Have you had a chance to read it cover to cover, or is it more the kind of thing that you just kind of picked and choose through? Like, I'm going to read about this game tonight, and because how would someone approach this book?
That is a very, very good question. So my approach was, I did start at the beginning. I wanted to make sure that I covered the bases. So I definitely read a lot of the longer articles in the early chapters, cover to cover. I mean, they have a history of JRPGs, read all of that, read all the introductions, definitely read on a lot of the series that get their own chapters, your Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest.
Yeah, I like those. It's kind of cool.
Things like that, the really, really influential series. And then I definitely read the introductions for all the different sections. And from there, because this has so many, 600 plus games in it.
It's a lot.
Within the entries, I kind of skimmed some of the bigger sections, looked at games that were early, middle, late, in that particular genre. Like, for example, the strategy RPGs, let's say. I looked at them at different points in time.
Spread the wealth around while you're reading.
Exactly.
Let's test your knowledge then. Pop quiz.
Oh, no.
Which Shin Megami Tensei came out in 1994? Go.
Oh, okay. Well, I have the book right here. Let's see.
It's good they distinguish between covering a series and covering individual titles as well. So some of
Yes.
them get the kind of series treatment. And some of them do have some of the more bigger popular series that just have a lot of words to say. They will split that up.
That is something I really tried to show with the excerpts and the previews, just because that is something that I thought was important for people to see, before going into getting the book, is that Soulsborne games, they get an entry. Kingdom Hearts has a series entry.
Yeah, that's fair.
It is.
But stuff like Tales of, they actually, since their games are so individualistic, those get the split.
And because there's so many of them over time, they are
Yeah.
one of the series that gets a chapter. And Shin Megami Tensei is another one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Shin Megami Tensei has quite a section.
It has a big section.
As it should.
Yeah, and there's Xeno and all that.
And I love that Falcom is also a section early on.
That's a good yeah, if anyone deserves this section, this kind of underdog company that's just survived for so long.
That's been around, over the course of JRPG lifespan.
Yeah, basically all of gaming time,
Yeah, and I really appreciate that kind of chronological approach. I mean, I said this throughout everything that I've written about this book, but they do a really good job trying to kind of place the games and the series kind of in a context so that you get an idea that Dragon Quest was, a very early, very influential console game that kind of pushed the development of JRPGs in a certain direction. Or, and it's a series that's been running ever since.
So that is a good distinction. So it's not actually alphabetical, it is kind of broken up into more specific sections.
Yeah, so there are subgenres aside from those really, influential developers and series. You have other series, and that's the largest chapter in the book actually, which I think is kind of telling. Because you've got some miscellaneous series, but then you have the subgenres. There's, simulation, your Rude Factories, your things like that. Yeah, and your strategy RPGs, they all kind of get their own sections toward the end.
Yeah, and then and then the stuff that's a bit more like the Atelier and stuff like that as well gets their whole thing, and it's just neat. Yeah, again, the most fascinating part is what we kind of touched on earlier too, is just seeing a lot of the games that we never knew about, because it's very easy to recognize all the household names and the household series franchises.
You think you're a JRPG fan? Read this book. You'll be introduced to just a lot, probably.
It's a good starting point if you're interested but don't really know where to start. But if you're someone who even knows a lot about JRPGs, I mean, this will help give your knowledge some context, and I'm pretty sure you'll find at least some things that you were less aware of.
Yeah, that you're going to start looking forward to play next, for sure.
Like the Lost classic, Just Breed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or Love Quest.
Can't wait.
That should be the subtitle of a Pokemon game.
Just breed? The Pokemon breeding.
Or, if you want to kind of know the context of the Conception series, but don't really want to play it,
Just Breed.
You can get the information you need.
You can finally talk to your weeb friend about it. I'm just teasing.
Can I ask you a question about the content of the book? Like I said, I haven't read it yet, but obviously there is just this massive list of contributors who are writing individual. Some of them write many articles in it. I can only imagine the job that an editor would have to, make sure these things are matching in terms of style, grammar.
Yeah.
How is the consistency of the writing throughout the book? Like, can you hear the different voices, or does it tend to be much more a coherent voice?
It's remarkably consistent, and that is actually something I mentioned in my review. I was looking for that because, as someone who proofreads for us, and
Thank you.
and knowing that there were 30 plus voices involved in this, I mean, it's pretty remarkable how consistent they were able to be. A lot of the entries, I think they struck a good balance. It seems like they all had consistent information, that they're meant to include, a little bit about the context development of the game, the plot, a little bit about the characters, gameplay, and all the entries I read ticked those boxes, and there weren't a lot of, discrepancies in terms of voice or grammar or anything.
And it doesn't read dry.
No, it doesn't. I mean, they give opinions.
Yeah.
Like, the entries are reviews, but it's kind of interesting because it's almost like the book is chronicling those opinions as well as everything else, including that as information about the game, how it was received.
I have a game that's going to be a litmus test for how they review it. I gotta take a look at this.
I actually used Kingdom Hearts as my litmus test, actually. Yeah.
Did you?
So now I gotta ask, what do you expect from a Kingdom Hearts review?
Depends on who's reviewing it, really.
Exactly. It was my litmus test to see if someone could, give the good and the bad.
yeah, and how well? Because that's an honest thing that you got to balance between, right? You don't always want to be negative. You do have to find the good and the bad, and you often can if you look for it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised that the quality of the writing is high, because it does have some extremely good writers working on it, including, let's just pick a name at random here. Tyler Trosper, Wes Elif. These names are hard to pronounce, but yeah, they sound like good writers. They have a good pedigree behind them. We got someone here named Robert Feener.
I think it's pronounced Finney.
Finney, Rob Finney. That's the name we're looking for.
But yeah, a lot of RPG fan alumnus and current site contributors contributed to this book in various ways. I mean, I feel like Tyler probably just did all the Xeno all the time.
Yeah, but there are also voices in here from RPG Site, from...
I think there's also some from even Nintendo Life or something like that, a few of the other major sites.
So there's many different press outlets are represented.
We should also mention that despite the fact that we have a few people who wrote in the book, this is not a sponsorship. They're not sponsoring anything. Bitmap Books has not contacted us about this. This is purely us being big fans of what these people are doing, and this book specifically.
And that you should join everybody else and buy it.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, I have an odd feeling that you like JRPGs.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, I couldn't endorse it if I didn't believe in it.
You wouldn't have made the cover if you weren't up for it.
Yeah, nobody else really does what Bitmap does. Please check our excerpts out if you really want just a taste for the writing, especially. But and I think it's really cool. I mean, we've been doing what we do, without really any much of a paycheck. So, I mean, we do it because of the love. And I think that's important that we communicate that, is that really it is a lot of big fans and nerds coming together to do this one big, beautiful thing.
And this really has that feel to it.
Yeah.
By fans, for fans.
Yeah, it's important.
Because it's so big. It's 652 pages.
It is.
It's a massive, massive book.
It's too much history for one person.
The amount of work that had to go into this is just jaw-dropping.
And we can brag about their other books too, because it's always, the quality's always up to snuff.
And looking at it, the contributors, there's a wide variety of expertise.
I was psyched when they reached out to me. It wasn't, the other, it wasn't any sort of, here's money to do this sort of thing. They reached out to me and I was just like, oh my God. Like a big nerd. I was like, hey, everybody. One of my friends bought one of their books as a gift for somebody else too. That's how I was introduced to them. And I totally did that. Can I borrow this book for the night? I took it home. And returned it over a month later. I returned it.
And that really is the strongest endorsement you could ask for. Just immediately asking to borrow and holding on to.
Yeah, just goodbye.
Mine now.
I want this.
I lent out my Chrono Trigger copy and never got it back.
Oh no.
That was my game of that. No, okay, anyways.
The one last area to kind of cover is, yes, they do go into a little bit of what is an RPG, which is a question that's on everybody's minds. Does this or does this not count?
Zelda's there. It is decided.
Yes, Zelda's here.
I think when somebody on the site asked me, can we review this game? I'm just going to refer them to this this article from this book, What is a JRPG?
I love that we have a big voting and veto process for that too, where it's we weigh the criteria of the game. It uses numbers, but does it use it meaningfully?
Just because there's numbers falling does not necessarily mean those numbers are falling in a JRPG.
Right. They use stats, but do they use them in a way that makes sense and kind of follows what would be expected?
And I think that this book is a wonderful catalog. I think it's interesting. Earlier you mentioned a dictionary, and then you mentioned that it's not in alphabetical order, and I think that that's important because I have a few books on my shelf, reference guides, things like that, and they are organized A to Z, and frankly, I find them very, very hard to read like that. There's no structure to them aside from just alphabetical order.
Right.
Yeah, you can't tell a story in alphabetical order. You just can't.
Right.
Whereas the way they've structured this book is much more intentional in terms of telling the story of JRPGs that they want.
Yes.
I haven't read it yet, but believe me, I will. And I think that that's going to give them, this book, it's going to be a much more easy read than if it was just title in alphabetical order.
Exactly. It makes it engaging. It does really kind of tell the stories of how this genre of games developed and changed over time. And I'm really going to be interested to see, as time goes on, how they're planning on following it up. Are they going to do a volume 2?
In 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess they already have the art of point-and-click adventure games, and point-and-click adventure games don't quite have the same ridiculous library that this does. Mm-hmm. I mean, JRPGs, it's stunning just how many in this book have never been released here. And I'm not just talking about forgotten Squaresoft gems. I mean developers that I've never heard of, with games that I cannot pronounce and that are probably sold about 150 copies in Japan. And yet they have a full write-up and a little review and the cover art, and it's really quite impressive.
What, you have problems saying Ningyo no Rekyuen or Volfas?
Oh, Parasite Eve, Vagrant Story. Yeah, so there's some... It's interesting. We were having a talk about... Oh, hey, Quest 64.
Oh, yes.
Probably the only N64 game in this book aside from the two Zelda games.
And I don't even know if Ogre Battle 64 is in there, because the Ogre Battle is, but I don't know if that one's in there.
I think Tactics Ogre made it too.
But either rate, it's a lot of great stuff.
I love that you're one of the few people I know who actually stands for SNES Ogre Battle. I love that. That was my brother's game when he was a kid, so it's just blowing my mind to see somebody else who's absolutely crazy about that game.
Pete and I go back and forth on it a lot and love the heck out of it.
It's so cool.
It really is.
I love those giant sprite portraits. Those things were my favorite things forever.
And it got me super into tarot.
Yeah. Oh my god, that was the best thing I ever stole from EB Games when I worked there. Was they had the tarot card deck that they released with Tactics Ogre.
For I really wish I'd gotten that.
With Akihiko Yoshida's art, I was like, oh yes. They're hey, can I have this? Yeah, do whatever you want. I'm yes.
So let's see. Page 516 is Ogre Battle, and page 517 is Tactics Ogre.
I got Live Alive. Love Quest is here after all. Oh my god, I was wondering what this game was forever.
Yeah, I was joking about it, but it's there.
There's an actual write-up. Oh my gosh. I kind of want. Yeah, wait. I want to see this Ogre Battle section.
But yeah, it's a very comprehensive book, and I'm super excited to I'm I'm hoping when I eventually get around to budgeting it in and or getting it as a GIF, I do want to get the hard copy version. But I mean, I'll settle for going through the PDF because it's still gorgeous and easy enough to read. It's just I prefer reading tomes than flicking through an iPad.
Just be careful taking it through the airport, like I did recently.
Wow. Now I gotta ask, relate the story.
You could kill a pilot with this, Missy. What are you doing with it?
I know. I did take it with me to Colorado just in case I needed to reference it as I was like finalizing everything, before release for our coverage. And the TSA definitely did take it out of my carry-on and leaf through it.
I've got to confiscate this for reasons.
I'm definitely not taking this for myself.
Oh man, Metabots!
Sorry, man, it was lost. Metabots!
Oh, and shout out to Leona. It does cover Jade Cocoon, of course.
Yay!
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I hope Leona's listening. We gotta let her know.
It's just an overall impressive tome, and I like the word tome to describe it because I think,
Right.
like, I mean, you probably could kill a pilot with this thing.
Read and drink it with your goblet.
You could, and you sort of asked me like how to approach it. I would say once you get that background of some of the bigger trends, the introductions, the big series, the big publishers, that first bit of it. After that, the best way to approach it is to just look through and find games. Stop at what's interesting to you.
Like, I think my favorite Lost in Translation now that might be better than Just Breed is High Leg Fantasy. Just what?
A high leg fantasy.
Yeah.
Just breed.
That's a common fantasy. Come on.
I mean, I suppose, but I feel like that's, again, lost in translation because it doesn't seem to be what it's meant to be. At any rate, yeah, it looks awesome, and it's definitely going to be fuel for our later conversation that we're going to get into. As far as playing games instead of just reading about them, I think the only one of us here that's really been playing anything recent was the remaster of Legend of Mana that I was so excited to get.
Yay!
Oh my god.
Yeah, when you got that code, you were pumped.
Yep. I don't know who... I mean, everyone here is familiar with it. I know Hill stands it pretty much as I do.
I am a fan, yes.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And same with Steph. But has anyone else picked it up yet?
Yes.
Not yet. I'm going to. It's actually kind of funny because I convinced Mike to start playing it.
The 2-player is so accessible.
Yeah.
On the new version it is, yeah.
I can't believe
I'm so
it.
happy about that, which I'll get into.
It's so good. It's actually a very decent, like it's a pretty decent co-op title. It's a little bit on the easy side, but it's like super easy to pick up and go.
That's why you got to do like the Nightmare mode afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's awesome. And I guess when I ask you, Steph, I should qualify my question a bit better. Okay, not only did you pick it up, but yeah, did you actually play it? Because a lot of people pick up things on Steam. Do they ever play them?
I've been like saving every video of an artifact placement and trimming it down because I want to make a big video
beautiful.
compilation.
That's fun.
Also, yeah, I'm totally into it. I am so into it. Like some of you know, I'm on Resetera, and I actually helped them with the official topic graphics because I was just so excited to be looking at it. Yeah, but no, it's so beautiful, and like I was just kind of really happy to kind of involve myself just even looking at the graphics or taking these videos or screenshots because they upped all of the graphics. Everybody, the sprite work is unchanged, but the actual background art, which I would argue is the most important of all, is so beautiful now.
Absolutely. And then also they somehow, as I was relating to Hill, they've made the soundtrack somehow better as well with the new rearrangements of Yoko Shimomura's like fantastic work. Because again, that soundtrack holds up. It was already really well put together.
That soundtrack was already really highly regarded, so
yeah,
to hear that you like it even more is really exciting.
I heard it's one of Shimomura's favorite because they actually gave her free reign to do whatever she wanted. So I think you kind of hear that happiness of free creative control like in her hands because it just sounds so flawless.
Absolutely. Like there's so much. It goes on such a journey, and then now having her come back in to oversee the direction and the rearrangement of it all, because that's all they did is just tweak the instrumentation.
Yeah, that's it.
But it still very much honors what it is and just gives you a different version of it. But like you can toggle back and forth, and it still holds up as a modern soundtrack either way.
Yes.
But yeah, so yeah, they like Steph was saying, they've updated the graphics, which was the biggest thing I was excited for at that game because I love it. And I still think it holds up even by PlayStation standards. One thing we were talking a bit earlier about is that there's fugly PlayStation where they with the 3D nowadays that's harder to watch. Popeye Arms, a la Final Fantasy VII, for example. And then there's the more like high quality Pixel stuff where they made the jump from the Super Nintendo to the PlayStation with their pixels.
We got pretty spoiled between this and Saga Frontier right now.
And then and for me, like Breath of Fire 3 was my first entry into that series, and it's gorgeous as well.
Yeah.
One of the other titles I always think of when we're talking about really pretty kind of more pixel-oriented PlayStation titles is Valkyrie Profile.
Absolutely.
Oh, so
and
beautiful.
so
Yeah.
there's games like that, and Legend of Mana is one of them that still stands the test of time, where when we started getting like the Trials of Mana remake and they released the collection of Mana, I was like, I really want this game, but I really don't want them to do a remake like they did of Trials, even though there's a lot to be said for the various gameplay systems in Legend of Mana that are, they're not quite half-baked, but they missed the mark a little bit because there's just a lot going on. It was a very ahead of its time game in almost every way. But I just didn't want them to touch it what it was. I just wanted them to visually upgrade it, and then they've given me that, which I am so grateful for.
The bosses still look as good as ever, too.
Those character sprites are fantastic. For the monsters, rather.
Yeah, no, but they put a lot of attention to a lot of the artwork and sprite work in the animations. Like, you got that silly fortune teller lady where a basket moves around her.
Yep, and all the vegetables, the fruits and vegetables spin around her. And
Yeah, the detective who, like, pops off on the spot and he's, like, when he's super pissed.
And people, like, they'll pick up things and it becomes part of their animation. Like, when you go and find Daddy's broom, for example, with the two little sorcerers.
Little cactuses,
little scampering around, like specific animation when it gets stuffed in a mailbox.
I'd actually argue, like, I'm actually excited this one of all of them. It'd probably not even be the most popular choice from fan input, but like for story perspective, I'm actually thrilled that this is the one that's actually getting an animated adaptation because I think it suits it best.
There's such a ripe world.
The visuals are so lived in. Like everything is so cozy and like it looks so real. That it's so cool.
You've got several locations that are really nicely built because they kind of have to be because they're all individual based on how the game world goes. So the locations are well developed, and you also have like several individually developed sets of characters that all have their own stories, which is probably going to work really well for an anime.
Yeah, for an arc in a TV show, yeah.
Now we're going to see what the Jumai are doing, and now we're going to follow the cat monk.
Yeah, and it was just an incredibly diverse and exciting world to kind of like jump from what Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy Legend, and Trials of Mana kind of had established in terms of their gameplay format to get this weird little collection of like short sketches or vignettes kind of thing, because that's the biggest thing that I find will probably let people have people sticking around or not, is just how almost disjointed the story can feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's I'm recognizing now just like how hard it can be to find like where's the effing trigger to get the event to go. Like I don't know how I mysticked my way through that when I was a kid. But now I'm like, I don't remember like how to go and get this quest going. I don't remember who to go see for this.
Right. Which artifacts do I need to get first to do this?
Yeah. And like, that's a whole other thing in itself. But like, that's part of the thing that really can hamper people if they're looking for a cohesive RPG story.
Exactly.
This isn't it.
Square Enix had a really experimental phase, you know, like back in the PlayStation era too. Like same with Sega Frontier 1 and 2. Like those games were really difficult to pick up and play. They had this whole disjointed story style as well. But like if you got to know them, they were super cool, but it's not an easy point of entry all the time.
But it almost lends itself to modern day gaming because they are such little vignettes that you can come in and do like one or two story beats and then be like, okay, I'll put this down for now. Especially if you get it on the Switch, which is the biggest reason I was really excited to have it. I remember playing Trials of Mana on the Switch, like with the Mana collection, and I was just like, I just want Legend of Mana. I just want to play this in bed or take it on the go. Like I want this here. And now I have it, and it's
Poor
amazing.
Greg thinking about this. Yeah, I know. Just like,
it's just, it's great. So when people want like that epic story, they're not going to get that here. But like you were saying, Hilary, it's just that the characters are where it's at. Like and that's what's going to make the anime really neat, is because the world and these characters that populate it are so whimsical and bizarre.
Their designs alone are just
the designs I could just brag about all the time. Did you get the Mana art book that they had that they recently put out, like the official one?
I did. Yeah, I've got it's Japanese, but like I have the whole thing, which I loved for that. Okay. Yeah, I think I shared some pictures from way back when with you, and looking at that artwork is amazing. Because
it was really cool to like actually look at why they designed some of the characters the way they did. You know, it's just like why is the Reverend's mouth shut? That's so strange.
And that lends itself to the other part that can be really challenging, at least with getting into the game's story, is how how at odds it is with itself. Like there's such a dichotomy in the tone of the game that you
Yes.
go from like lighthearted, cute little cactus just trying to go get a potion for somebody, the little sorcerers being like, oh, we're going to take over the world even though our dad was a dropout and we're really bad.
Like a junkyard of toy warriors.
But then, then there's that. You go there and you talk to these little toys with souls trapped in them. They're like the horrors of war. I relive the battle and
Right?
watching my friends die. And you're like, dear goodness, like there's so many elements of this. It was like, yeah, Gwen will get this. She'll have fun with this, for example, my 10-year-old. And then other times it'll be like, that's too heavy for her and she won't understand that. Like it's really weird, and I can see why people may have bounced off it in those ways as well.
Oh, cut her some slack. I was 10 years old when I played it.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there's still stuff to get out of it, but then you go into the gameplay systems too that are also so deep that I know again that's something that bounce off.
It gets involved, yeah.
Yeah, like I barely touched crafting back in the day because it was so like deep and weird, and I applaud the people that committed to it.
Same. I tried a little.
And rearing pets, which as I already mentioned to Hilary, my first pet I got was you get a rabbit in like the tutorial, and I named it Lil Hill.
Aww.
Just to share with my my mutual fandom.
Yay.
And I also got my first golem is named Soulbot Zero. And it's emerald green or cabbage green, but it looks emerald green. So I got that, but it's.
Can you name your next imp Steph?
Will do. Done.
Like all
and Jono, I can name one of my weapons
Yay.
after you. Give me a badass weapon name, and that's one thing I loved as when in my youth is
The Jonobo.
Is Jonobo is renaming everything. You can create the world like your imagination. They out of the gate they tell you your imagination is what builds this world, and you can rename all your gear that you craft or not, like whatever you find. You can be like, I'm going to call this the epic sword of epicness. Cool, go for it. And you can rename all your pets that you find, and you can...
I'm going to call my sword Pistol
Exactly.
Pin.
You can, and you place these artifacts to build the world in your vision, but also there is a weird system to like mana levels that you have to try and figure out, because depending on how those are, you can unlock certain events and find some of the more rare pets and stuff like that. There's just so much to it.
Those mana levels also influence the materials that you can find for all of that in-depth crafting.
Right,
so
yeah.
I keep finding like stanky breath and rust. Like I don't understand
like,
what the
what did I do to this world to fill it with stinky breath and rust?
Do better, Steph. But yeah, it's there's a lot I can go off of, but it's always held like such a special place in my heart that again I was just wanting them to kind of leave it as is, and I say this as much in my review that's probably going to be up.
I really hope they choose a stylized approach like this, like in the future for a future mana game. I want like such a heavily stylized approach like this. I don't want humanoids.
Well, Heroes of Mana kind of had that, but the game just wasn't that great, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, but like I like the rejection of humanoids. Like they like give you like a teapot character for
Yeah,
goodness sake.
the
I love
really
it.
British teapot character.
I mean, they got some really wild and cool designs. Like there's a basilisk teacher.
Yep. Like the weird disc, like those teachers are all bizarre. It's just such a shame that it was still so limited in so many ways too. That like the stories do give you a lot more to them, but then in between those stories, none of the characters really have anything to add. Like they just kind of have their little NPC loops, and that's about it.
Literally, the complaint is we want
Exactly,
more.
and that's it. And like and they definitely after the PlayStation era, they ran with like a theme with all this.
They did touch up the localization with this.
A little bit. I haven't noticed a lot of changes, just a few words here and there, but most of it's still there. Gilbert is still racy as F and awkward.
Oh boy.
Make me hard. That one's just awful. Speaking of the basilisk teacher, stupid Gilbert. He's the worst. But it's held a special place in my heart. And the thing that they've done really well, which I like to hope was their goal, was the same thing I think Jono and we talked about last episode too with the Diablo 2 remaster, is it's just so subtle that like I just play this game and I'm like, it's just what I remember. Nothing's changed. This is exactly the game.
Yeah.
Because it's done through the modern day lens so perfectly, warts and all, because there's so many of the clunky systems, but it looks and sounds like a game I would just play it as I remember it through my youth. And it's not just nostalgia or whatever. Like they've just done it in such a great way that I'm like, perfect.
Right, and they sort of struck that balance of updating just enough so that it feels the same. And because I know a complaint a lot of people had about the Secret of Mana remake is that they did not update. They remained consistent when maybe
and added more warts.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to cry mulligan on that. Can we just remake that one again?
Let's do it again, right?
Try
They
it
will
again.
at some point, I guarantee it.
They might try. I would like them just to do the Trials of Mana treatment with it, and it'd be really fun. Or maybe make a better Dawn of Mana,
Make it look like clay.
Oh, that'd be so good, like in the manual. Yeah, that'd be incredible.
Or like the Link's Awakening remake style.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh,
It'd be
good.
amazing.
Greg, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, sure.
I know that there's been a lot of talk about this, and a lot of people reviewed it poorly at the time, and people who loved it...
Our site was pretty high on it, though.
Yeah, people who loved it a lot.
It's me.
Yourself included, but a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
Why do you think Legend of Mana was considered to be a bit of a failure as an RPG in the time it was released?
It's a tricky question. I mean, like I was going to say, like there's some of the things they could have fixed up. Like one of the things is what I already touched on was just, again, it's weird all over the place story, and that wasn't really clear. Like
It feels like a lot of content was cut on the cutting room
there's
floor.
a lot of that too. So it feels some stuff is a little patchwork because they just didn't have time, or they just had to cut things because of constraints in one way or another. Yeah, it's just, I think that the people at that point in time were wanting like their epics. Like Final Fantasy was just getting into these 3-disc epics with a big cohesive storyline
and like serious stuff.
Yeah.
There's like blood. There's mature themes,
Exactly.
and this is like looks like a kid's storybook.
But then also you get these weird dramatic stories in it. So like it kind of had the same problem in my mind that Ogre Battle 64 had. Because Ogre Battle 64 tanked as well because you had hardcore fans of the series that wanted to play it and wanted that dark, gritty story of rebellion. And you read Pete's paper on it, and you can see like the dramatic themes that take place in it, but then you look at it and it looks like a game for kids. So it's the same thing with this. You get this whimsical Disney-inspired world of Fadiel with these bizarre, quirky characters that you could see in a Saturday morning cartoon. And you get the odd little, like, goofy little story line of, Nick wanting to take you out and be like, oh, let me just go and haggle my friend and try and sell him on junk. And, that's really funny. And pratfalls.
They actually did design Nicolo to be annoying looking. I love that.
But then you get to, like, these, like, inner turmoil things, like we said about the toys, for example, or some of the other more, like, what is the meaning of life discussions that, like, a kid would bounce off of.
Right. I mean, like, one of the story arcs involves... someone trying to help her friend who's aged prematurely, and that's got a lot of existential questioning.
And so I think that was really what turned people off, and I think that was something that maybe now people might be a bit more open to because we have so many more different experimental systems. But then you have the other things like the dumbest bricks AI is still there. There's the crafting system's still kind of slow and very like what the heck is going on. There's no real good primer on what anything does. It's just all trial and error, and the game literally tells you figure it out. It's expensive, have fun.
I'm mad like the characters never pick up experience points.
They're
but
all
at the same
allergic
time
to
since
it.
I'm doing most of the work, I'm glad they don't, and I get mad when they do. I'm like, no, you don't deserve
Right?
it.
I had a friend try to convince me that if you had a pet that had the scheming trait, they would try and steal experience from you.
Well, there's that's the other thing is going into that, like you try and make them aggressive, like then they'll get in there a lot more. But when they have no personality, like that's all. Like there's just so much to it that you have to invest in with all of its playthroughs. And that's the other thing too, is people probably just wanted one succinct whatever adventure.
Right.
Whereas this game is meant to just
true.
be played again and again and again to try and do different things. I say this much in my review, which will probably be out before this goes up, is even now, like I've played through the game like 3 or 4 times and done various different mixes of things. And I went into a couple of interactions that either I'd forgotten or was completely new to me just by virtue of how I place things, or I decided to go with another character first and ran into another character and I was like, oh, I've never seen this interaction before. How cute, and like that was genuinely surprising.
Wow.
And so the game encourages you to go back through it, kind of like Trials of Mana did. If you wanted to get the whole story, you had to go back through and play with different characters.
For me, that's the interesting bit here. Although I know that Legend is a spin-off, it's not Second Setsu 4.
No.
I think one of the reasons it failed for the West is because Square did nothing to prime the audience for it.
Nope.
It was marketed in the West as the direct sequel of Secret of Mana, because we never got Trials of Mana.
Yeah, that's the best we
We
could
never
go
got
with.
it here. Second Setsu was no one knew what that was. It was the Mana series. So first off, we have a quote unquote sequel to a game that was released in 1993. This is 7 years earlier. It doesn't look like Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VIII, so it already looks kind of like a throwback to the SNES era. And also games like, I mean, yes, it was developed in part with the Saga team.
I was going to say, Akitoshi Kawatsu, who had directed Saga, you can kind of see why it's a little all over the place and avant-garde.
But that's my point. Like, in the West, we didn't even get the follow-up to Secret of Mana Second Densetsu 3, which introduced like multiple characters and multiple branching paths. So the audience had no frame of reference for that. The Western audiences didn't have the Saga games, so they didn't have a reference for non-story directed content where it's literally putting like, here's where you go, here's where you go, here's where you go. The idea of there being tons and tons of subplots and you kind of find your own adventure was completely and utterly foreign.
And you're just the spectator in it too. That's the other thing, is you aren't, even though you're the hero, you are very rarely like the center of any of these stories. You are mostly an observer who's participating, and you're the catalyst to help things move along, but you're not the focal point. The other characters are.
Which is why I think that the reason why I think the remaster has landed considerably better than it did back in 2000. It's not because it's a better game now. It's because we're primed for it. We know what to expect. We've explored various systems like this before. It wasn't. I don't even want to say it was a game ahead of its time. It was a game ahead of. It was a game ahead of where Western audiences were at the time.
There's a good sense of nostalgia, I think, going back to it. Yeah. And like I always like to think like the sort of drought that we had, you know, in like around the PS360 cycle. Sort of got people fond for a lot of old series, and like we lost a lot of series there too, like with the PSP and kind of dying, and you know, like we won't see a lot of these you know, where like a lot of the third game went onto the portables, and then that's it. Like Suikoden kind of died on the portable system. Yeah, like we've just lost the Breath of Fire series has just kind of died on the PlayStation 2. So I mean, when we see a kind of old series coming back, it's just like, yes, it still lives. You know, we weren't wrong for liking it, or it's good to have it back.
And I also want to say that while the game was not beloved, it also did not get like crucified by reviewers at the time.
No, it was just all over the map.
Yeah, it got late 60s, late 60s, early 70s, high 60s, low 70s in terms of scores.
It's got a lot of charm that I think rounds out those flaws.
I'm looking at the GameFAQs list reviews. So we have a whole bunch of 9s, a few 10s, 1 8, and then 3s and 4s. So it's like love it or hate it.
Basically, that's what I always got the sense of too. I wanted my best friend so badly to play with me. He was just like, eh.
It wasn't what people expected. It didn't look like people wanted to play at the time, and the people who did play it oftentimes were baffled by what it was.
You couldn't do the 3-player thing.
Right, and it felt like a very vast departure from what was supposed to be, quote unquote, you know, a direct predecessor or what.
And then also it wasn't 3D, and that was also very in vogue at that point as well, right? It wasn't an exciting 3D world to explore.
So big question is, like, what are we going to see for the next big feature that they're making?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, like the Mana series seems to be officially back. Like, it's a series that's back on the table.
It's getting a bit of a resurgence thanks to, I think, the Collection of Mana and Trials of Mana's success, and I hope they work in that. No, I hope they keep going in that direction with it, as much as I would like to see something more like this. But I would love to see them extrapolate some of the systems they explored in Legend of Mana and make that happen.
Did anybody play Dawn of Mana here?
I did, unfortunately. I had high hopes for it.
Oh, that bad even for a fan.
I also, same with Children of Mana. I had a lot of high hopes for it because stylistically it was very similar.
Children of Mana was fun for like a few hours.
It wears out. It's welcome, unfortunately, even though it's more of like this kind of world.
Here's Sword of Mana was fun.
Sword of Mana is cool, but it was just a remake of Final Fantasy Legend, right?
Which is a great game.
Exactly, and it still holds up. But anyways, to finish off this conversation, it's just... This is a great way to get back into it. If you've never played it, absolutely play it. If you want that esoteric experience, but just can admire the true beauty of the game, just be ready that it's very non-traditional in a lot of ways, and it's not like...
Is there sort of like a weird coincidence that like Legend of Mana is getting an animated series, and like the kind of similar fantasy, kind of happier, funner, quirkier Final Fantasy is also getting an animated series? So rare that it actually happens, but like, how curious, eh?
It's going to be super fun. And both of those are again, even Final Fantasy, you know what you're getting, but Final Fantasy IX still had its darker themes too in there. So I'm wondering how they'll explore that at all, if they'll just keep it all whimsy and light all the time, right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting style. Like, you could actually kind of make a comparison between those two games, because 9 was also like, it was supposed to be kind of a throwback to the earlier games, but it also kind of have more of that like lighthearted feel that maybe people were...
It translates to screen well.
Yeah.
They're all very character-centric too, which again is also going to be good for adapting.
It's fascinating to me that, I mean, I recall at the time that I was super excited when Final Fantasy IX came out and it was going to return to the fantasy location. It was going to return to somewhat super deformed characters. But I do recall there being a lot of gamers at that time who were horrified by this, and they were saying this compared to Final Fantasy VIII, this looks terrible.
Yeah, what is this? It's cutesy.
But it plays better.
Doesn't have triple triad, but yeah.
So, yeah, I recommend people give it a try if they're at all interested. You just have to kind of pick where you want to play it, I guess, and like what you want, because on Steam you can play co-op online, which is rad, but you can't do that on consoles. The PlayStation, I'm sure the PlayStation 4 will be a powerful system to do it on, and for myself, I definitely found myself wanting a PlayStation controller to play it on because the analog stick's a little imprecise with how it moves around the world. Like I found myself getting stuck on things a lot. Whereas on a D-pad, it's a lot better, but the D-pad on a Switch is very not ergonomic where it's positioned. But I love having it handheld on the Switch, so I'm willing to suffer for it. But if you're not, carefully weigh where you want to pick it up. There's also a little bit of frame rate drops on the Switch, but I don't know if that's just bad porting and just there was a lot of that in the original one too, but it's had a lot going on.
Warts and all.
So just, set yourself up for what you want. And my review will be up if you want to get a little more in depth with all the systems and what to look forward to that they changed. Also, I didn't mention it, but Ring Ring Land, it's silly and fun. I would rather have it on my phone than playing it on like a little PlayStation Pocket mock-up that they kind of put in the game. It fits. It doesn't look weird. And it's a neat little way to level up your pets. It's probably more effective than, as Steph said, waiting for them to maybe pick up experience.
Right.
But it's super simple, and I could see it being better as like an idle little phone thing that I would do as opposed to specifically booting up Legend of Mana to play Ring Ring Land. It worked well as a Pocket Station thing, but not on the console. I would rather take it on the go, like the little Pokeball Plus thing, to do that.
I was always sad we never had the Pocket Station here.
But it's fun. It's cute.
The VMU picked up the slack, yeah.
You touched on this earlier, but the other important reasons to maybe look at this are the fact that it's pretty easy to pick up and put down. The individual quests are pretty short.
Yeah, and it has an autosave, and you can save anywhere now too, which is great.
Oh wow, nice. Yeah. That, and there's a lot going on. Like the Mana series had a big anniversary recently, so there is the anime, which we already talked about, and 2 upcoming new titles that we're waiting to learn more about.
Yeah, the mobile one will be a mobile
game thing that everyone gets upset when I bring up.
I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be fandom the video game like most of those are, and that's fine. I'll be happy to summon all those characters into my world and do cool things with them because I've been waiting for them to do some sort of Mana crossover in like Final Fantasy Record Keeper, and they never did. So
yeah, I think it'll
want
suit
that.
It should be fun.
And then we'll see whatever this new one is going to be. But I really hope we get another cool new Final Fantasy world that is what I kind of wanted from Dawn of Mana. That game just really let me down in how it was built. I always found playing like Crystal Chronicles and Crystal Chronicles Echoes and all that sort of stuff, I was like, this is what Mana should have become. Partying up with your friends and running around in this world, not stupid Dawn of Mana. Like, it was really, really exciting playing those games and just getting that vibe that it was Final Fantasy with Secret of Mana flavor, because it was a lot more whimsical and just a more jubilant, colorful world from where Final Fantasy had been going otherwise, right?
Sort of sad that Square Enix isn't really looking at the Crystal Chronicles world much right now.
Yeah.
I think, the Crystal Chronicles HD remaster kind of put a nail on that for now.
It's possible, yeah. I mean, I liked it for what it was, but I still think there's legs if they make a new thing in it. But I mean, they also have got Final Fantasy 14, so I mean, if you want to play multiplayer Final Fantasy, there's that.
Yeah.
It's got Lalafels. Have fun.
Yeah, true.
Could be a Lalafell.
True.
Right? Like, I don't know why they haven't included some of the races from Crystal Chronicles. So that'd be really cool if there was a whole Crystal Chronicles raid series or world. Go party with the Yuka. That'd be neat.
Yeah.
But at any rate, it's an exciting time to be a Mana fan, that's for sure, and this game is exciting. But one thing we do want to discuss, because I've overlooked it for the past few episodes, we got a Twitter comment purely out of my constant whining like a mother saying, why do you never call? DM Eggs messaged us directly, feeling bad that I never get mail, and asked us a really great question that I really want to pose to you all, because it's going to be some cool discussion. So yeah, DM Eggs, which I only made me think of Steph. For past references, Steph has made to a rest in peace particular rap artist. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no.
DM Eggs. What?
X-Gun, give it to you.
So the question was, if you could combine features from any game in the series, what would your perfect FF system be? And I'm fine with, also dipping into any of the side stuff. Can be Chronicles, can be Tactics. Let's not just keep it mainline. Whatever. What is your ideal Final Fantasy amalgamation of games to make the perfect Final Fantasy system?
That is a good question. I definitely have an answer ready. I don't know if anyone else does.
I do too. And that's it. I guess, do we want to, as a group, make the perfect Final Fantasy game, or do we each want to give our individual perfect combinations, or do we want to just each pick our favorite?
Let's give our individual thoughts briefly, and then let's
Sure.
talk about, can we combine these?
We'll workshop it. We got a little time.
So Steph, do you want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Steph.
Okay, well, since you brought up the co-op adjunct, so I was thinking one of the action ones with Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, just so we could get that co-op angle. But putting that aside, to be honest, it'd be Final Fantasy X-2's job system with Final Fantasy X combat.
Nice.
Because I love how quick it is, and I love the whole stats thing. I love when you cast haste, you can see your turn order just completely change.
Yeah, it's very satisfying.
So I actually really like that kind of control and speed over the combat, even though it was turn-based. Turn-based gets especially 7, 8, and 9 had a really bad rap for being slow, but that was really, really fast turn-based, and I loved it.
And it lets you really strategize, which is really neat about it. I love games that have been introducing that now.
Yeah. Oh, especially some of the endgame stuff.
One of my biggest things, Star Renegade's recent development was one of my favorite things about it was being able to see the initiative order and how, and the key tactic to that was manipulating that order to take advantage of it and outspeed your enemy, so to speak. Took for granted 10's combat system, and I think I'd have a lot more fun with it now, to be frank. And so you want just those two? There's nothing else in there you want to add? What about... I guess, the job system is the growth system.
You know what? I was actually a big fan of the Final Fantasy VII Remake ATB style. Fusing something like that with the job system as well could be super duper hella sexy. Or, job system / co-op, because I'm a huge co-op gamer. I absolutely love co-op.
I mean, job system co-op is great.
If you put co-op in your game, it will be a better game to me.
Dark Souls co-op. Let's see it happen. You can play with Rob and it'd be awful.
But at least it wouldn't be people constantly, coming in and trying to kill you.
Right? They'd be constantly coming in and trying to help you.
True, yeah. You'd have a friend to die with.
Don't die alone.
Die with me, friend. We will go together.
Oh, amazing. Hilary, what about you? What is the perfect Final Fantasy game amalgamation for you?
Well, it actually looks surprisingly similar to Steph's, which is really funny because I was thinking
it's a good system.
I thought of Remake pretty early on when thinking about this question, and just how fun, and fast, and I think it is still strategic. Different characters have their different things that they're good at. You can switch between them,
which is good because theoretically, I love the whole they can all be, you can build them differently in Final Fantasy VII. But I do like when they have something that makes them unique. Exactly. That's important, yeah.
But combining that with a job system would just be a lot of fun.
Oh, it would be so good.
What else would I add in? Yeah, and I guess this goes along with that. But I do kind of miss some of the Final Fantasy games where everybody had their unique skill and talent.
6.
Yeah.
It's very much the epitome of that.
Yeah, 6 was all about that.
I guess 7 too, a little bit with limit break, so the materia made it a little bit different.
Yeah, you could do a catch-all with that if you really wanted to, but that was up to you to individualize if you wanted.
I did like how simple Final Fantasy 9's was. I think they could always do something like that and expand upon it.
Yeah, I liked that, and how they used that in Tactics Advance as well, just that you learn from the gear.
To bring back a tactics format would be so amazing. I don't know what Square would ever do about that besides their mobile
Which is fun.
I would like to see an SRPG with something like that where you can use the different gear, and that would be a lot of fun.
That would be amazing, yeah.
What about a Final Fantasy, but throw it all out and just do a battle royale? I'm kidding. We are getting that, and it's actually surprisingly fun, to be frank. I really like that. We haven't talked about it.
What about a dating sim where you can date?
You can date your materia.
You can date Advent Children Cloud, and this week you get a special deal on Sulky Cloud.
Materia boyfriend.
A materia boyfriend.
Summon boyfriend. You date the summons. There we go. Hilary, do you have anything else that you wanted to build in there? So you got, have you landed on a tactical or is it 10?
I mean, either of those two things.
Yeah.
There's so many different directions you can go in this.
I mean, they're both so different games. You can't combine the two, really.
Exactly. So I think I would either like to see something like Steph mentioned or something that kind of combines some of those gear-related aspects of 9 with something a little more SRPG-like would be really, really fun.
A gear or even a kind of FF12 Redux, to kind of bring that sort of MMO-ish kind of component, that big world would be really cool. I don't love Final Fantasy 12. I just find it really frustrating and hard to kind of start up a new game. But I did love it when I started getting into it, and I think something like that would be really cool for them to revisit. They were ahead of the curve.
They were trying things out for other stuff.
And it would be great to see it come back.
Jono, what's your perfect system?
My perfect Final Fantasy systems are still based in the in 2D ATB combat.
It's Final Fantasy 2, isn't it?
It's not Final Fantasy 2, although
We just want to punch each other in the face.
I will tell you something about Final Fantasy 2 that I did love, that I very
Passwords.
much enjoy. Not passwords, guest party members.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so true.
I mean, Final Fantasy tends to go back and forth between having 4 party members and 5 party members. I really like in Final Fantasy 2 when you have 4 core party members and you can have guest party members come in with their own abilities and things like that, because I find it really useful for advancing the story.
I like that they brought that into Bravely Default too.
I love it when they were overpowered a bit too, eh?
Yeah, they also have it as a part of Final Fantasy Dimensions.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because that was Final Fantasy, both versions of Final Fantasy 2, depending on how you look at it, had that.
I also really love, I just love a good job system. It's just the way I am. So yeah, Final Fantasy X2 or Final Fantasy 5 or Final Fantasy 3. Like, I just love a real good job system that gives you a lot of customizability. One thing I would like to see, though, I do agree with you, though, that the part of the problem with jobs is that it does tend to make your characters into blank slates, which you can customize as you want. I would like the job system to be there, but I would still like individual characters to have their own individual abilities on top of the job system.
Yeah, I think could be pretty cool. Like a little bit like Tactics, where instead of not everyone started as Squire, like they would have like Agris still got some of those Squire abilities, but the Holy Knight ones, for example, and Ramza had the Squire abilities plus some of the other fun of his own stuff.
Judgment Rock Throw.
And ATB, I really like the active time battle system. I always have. I like the fact that I'm trying to like navigate through menus as fast as possible to make plans, because I don't have, if I wait too long, I'm just gonna get hammered by the enemy. Turn-based is great, and I mean this technically is still turn-based, but I like frantic going through. Yeah,
It amps up the stakes.
It's sort of stupid, but like one of my favorite fights in all of Final Fantasy X is that one you do against Kamari, and it's just you guys exchanging a volley of sword fights because the combat moves so fast in terms of like turn base in that one. And like, literally as Kamari's pulling away, you could be like almost jumping right back into it to attack back. I always love that. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah, if I had to pick a battle system in one of the spin-offs.
Mystic Quest.
Yes.
I just want to jump over people.
It's sort of a prototype for Bravely Default, so it's kind of cheating, but I think the battle system in Final Fantasy IV Heroes of Light was always kind of cool.
Yeah, that's true.
It's turn-based. It has the job system that I really love.
The graphics for the game are so cute.
I've only gotten through like a quarter of that game, and then I stopped. I really need to replay it because
I'm stuck on the final boss.
I could really go for some Proto Brave.
Right, it's pretty good for that. And anything else, or is that your mix?
No, that's my mix. What do you got, Greg?
Nice.
What do you want to see in a Final Fantasy battle system?
I was talking on Twitter a little bit about this with Stephen Meyerink a bit ago.
He's fun to razzle with and kind of struggle with opinions with, because he's a good contrarian in a good way.
But he was talking about how much the Gambit system is great, and I love it. I'm not going to lie. Like, as much as you're saying 12 can be what it is, but I love 12 in so many ways and what it was trying to do, that I want that active time battle system where you are moving around the world, because what I loved about 12 is it let a lot of spells shine that previously didn't. There's so often when you're going into like individual encounters, like you're not going to go and throw haste on there or cast float, because you're going to rip through that battle in like under a minute and you're just blowing MP on nothing. Whereas because you were going from encounter to encounter, much like an MMO, and engaging with the enemy, and your spells lasted between battles, I thought that was fantastic, and it really added to the strategy to try and be like, hey, I'm going to cast haste and bubble and be ready, and I need to refresh those because I'm expecting to run into a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. So I loved that mixed with the Gambit system to kind of let your party go on a bit on autopilot, even though you could jump between them if you wanted to be hands-on. It was, the Gambit system, corrected a bit better, was really neat for programming, for lack of a better word, your party to react as you kind of want them, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I want the Gambit system mixed with that open world ATB system, I guess.
Because that's one thing we actually haven't addressed all that much is, party members acting independently versus controlling all of them. Mm-hmm. And in terms of that, the Gambit system's great. Yeah,
I absolutely think it's great for that. I wish there was something like that in Tactics.
I want Final Fantasy 8-2. I want Final Fantasy 8-2 where it's like more like Yu-Gi-Oh, where you battle with the cards and you kind of get through the game.
That's a great idea. Card battlers are hot right now, so
there you go.
They'll just reboot Final Fantasy VIII with Triple Triad. That's perfect.
and then you summon them out. So for me, like, I want that system. And I'm same as any of you. I love a job system. So whether that's the job system from Tactics, though, Advance was super fun because it combined like Nine's learning abilities based on the equipment with a job system. So it still made specific, and then because they had the specific races that could only have access to specific jobs, I think that's what we really need, whereas certain characters can only access certain jobs kind of thing. And that would make it less like they're all blank slates. It still makes them unique. Like they're still predisposed to like, this one's your warrior and we'll go more that way, whereas this one will grow more as magic.
That's racist.
Well, I don't mean like species wise, but I mean like character wise. You know, so imagine like Cloud would never go down the healer path.
It's a cool idea. No, I think it's a
kind
it's
of
a cool
like
adjunct.
where Cloud could maybe as close as get to
the Banga Gladiator. I thought was really cool. Like even the like different designs they would have, and some of them would have shared.
It was super cool.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
Letting you see a bit more of those species at play and such. So yeah, having a job system that develops like that would be rad, combined with a gambit system.
I want them to go back to Ivalice.
Don't
That's what I want.
And not just in the raids.
Job systems in Ivalice.
And aside from that,
you got it, a license for your hat.
And I just want Chocobo Hot and Cold back.
Yes. So good.
That's my Chocobo system. I think that would be super, super cool just to see all that kind of combined.
We did it. We made the dream Final Fantasy game.
Whatever you want, plus Chocobo Hot and Cold. There you go. Instant winner.
Cutesy graphics, triple triad, Chocobo Hot Cold, turn-based job systems, and all the spells have to be useful. So poison status, it's your time to shine.
It's great being able to use all those things. Like, how many dump spells do you have? Even like learning everything from the espers and stuff like that. You're just like, I'm never going to use, I don't know, Blink.
Does Mini even do anything?
I'm going to imp myself just so I can use the imp gear, I guess. I don't know. Just to change their cute little character portraits.
But I've heard that imps and imp gear do really well in the Colosseum.
They really do.
Wait, is that a thing?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I need to experiment it, but I've heard
it is a strategy. Like there is a valid reason.
Can't tell when people are joking anymore.
Yep. Either way, DMX, thank you so much for that question. It's a fun topic.
And excellent username.
Yes, and I hope people will either comment on Twitter or comment on the actual post on the site, whatever. Just let us know, some great systems that you want.
That's a good idea. Like if you're on social media, like bring it to me. I will report, like if it's easier for you to just go on Facebook or Twitter, just please let us know. We're always reading. Yeah.
we want to hear from you folks. So yeah, just hit us up wherever, like DMX did. Add us on Twitter and ask questions and complain or feel bad for my plight of not hearing from you all. I will read them. We'll let you know.
Greg will use his mom voice.
And with that, I think we're basically at the end of the show. It's been a good ride, everybody. I am excited to get anyone back on, especially you, Steph, to talk about artwork. But Hilary, thank you so much for sharing your expertise on this book and your love of it. And Steph, fantastic work on that art. Mwah.
Thank you.
Your artwork's great. I haven't actually shared it with anybody on the site yet, but I did commission from Steph a beautiful family portrait of my family in Pikmin style, and it's incredible. We're all working with Pikmin. I've been wanting to share it, but we just haven't had the.
It was so fun. I hope you were happy with how you looked as a what do you call them, the Olimar species?
Yeah. I love it. I think it turned out beautifully. The only reason I haven't shared it because I wanted to share like the hard copy. Steph, my family did love it, FYI, and I recommend everybody commission things from Steph. No, because my wife was like, this is amazing. Where are we going to put it? Because our wall is already so full of art. But everyone look up at Dice SMS on either the Twitter or on the Instagrams.
Dice
and
SMS,
hit her for some commissions because her work's amazing. I love it. And I'll share it with people on the site at some point. I just wanted to share a hard copy, but until we have the space and the budget for it, I'm not going to hook it up. So
the bills are the priority at the moment, especially after COVID, just kind of rang through all of us.
Well, exactly. And lots of transitions going on here around the house that money has to go elsewhere. So it's just, it's good times. We're doing good after COVID to be clear, but it's still, you got to pick and choose.
Yeah.
What is a priority? Otherwise, folks, find us at RPGFan.com on Twitter and Instagram. You can check us out on Facebook as well. And we're on Twitch where Scott mostly, and then Max, and are streaming all kinds of stuff. I think Scott, once again, has gone back to Legend of Mana. Yeah,
he loves
I love
it
that
too.
game. It's got so much playability. You can just do all kinds of silly things. I want to just do fun voices for that game.
Oh, it's so charming. Oh my god, can we please get like a voice edition?
Oh my gosh, we should get a group of us to do different voices.
Right?
To help Scott.
With us? Oh my god, a voice edition.
Or on stream. I was thinking on stream. Like,
that'd be so chaotic, but super fun.
We'll try to audition everybody appropriately for it.
It'd be so much fun. You can email us, podcast@rpgfan.com. with questions like what DMX threw at us, or just comments on the site, or just tell us we're doing all right. We'll take it, and tell us you're doing all right, because we'll take that as well. Otherwise, you can go check out Retro Encounter, where they're playing old games, but within 2 years only. I mean, how does that work now? Are they allowed to play Legend of Mana Remaster, because it's too new?
I think they swing for those kind of things too.
Right? Exactly, yeah. I mean, you may as well play it in the most premium way you can.
I think they have done some remasters. It's
I'm sure they have. Yeah. I'm just throwing around silliness.
I will say July is, Ladies Otome month on Retro. I'm hosting that one. We recorded our first episode, and it was a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to that.
I was not knowing what I was going to get into, but should be a fun listen.
I might have to pick your brain about that actually, or I'll have to listen to that podcast for like which games to get, because I don't know, they're sappy. I'm actually a really big romance sap, so I think those would be up my alley. I've never played them though. So
yeah, look forward to Oh My God, and when it comes out.
Okay, that's what the episode's called now.
Oh my God.
Can I draw you guys as Otome characters?
Gosh, that's amazing. Specific art.
With like big, beautiful, colorful eyes and like, kind of big bouncy hair.
So the panel is me, Lucy, Nikki, and Audra if you want to.
You had her at Can I Draw You?
Okay, that would be really fun. And like, please give me like the like Otome crush of your dreams that I can like,
put in their eyes.
With a little thought bubble of.
Yeah, amazing. Otherwise, Phoenix Edge had a bit of a hiatus, but they come back strong with a lot of thoughts on everything that happened at E3, amongst other things.
That usually brings people back, I think. I was in a bit of a groove and a bit of a fun, too.
It's been a lot. You also have then Rhythm Encounter coming back from its bit of a hiatus, too. Jono jumped in to help Mike getting a lot of the editing out of the way, because Jono's been learning the craft. Has been editing for us as well to help me out as well.
Well, Greg, it's easy when you give me so much gold to work with.
There's no bad episodes. That's a lie. There's a lot of them. Otherwise, have fun out there, friends. Play some games. If you're on summer vacation and you're lucky enough to still be a student or youth, take that break and play all the games. If you're an adult, well, keep living your life.
July is a good month to play an RPG.
Unclog the backlog.
Right? Look at a guide to Japanese role-playing games. I've seen a lot of people, responding to our coverage saying they want to get the book or they've ordered the book. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, please do. Snatch it up and let us know. And otherwise, Hilary, Steph, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Oh, it's always fun to be on.
It's been all Steph all the time for the past few episodes.
It's okay here.
We'll always take it. We like to have all kinds of fun, diverse opinions on the show, and it makes it better. Jono, speaking of which, thank you so much for keeping me on task and being a great co-host.
Always.
And for everybody else, thank you so much for listening and giving us a purpose to talking to the ether about video games. On that note, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.